So recently there has been a lot of discourse about numpad notation in the FGC. This is mainly because of 2HKO bringing a lot of new players from other game genres that don't have a system like this. So there's been a lot of this discussion about whether or not it is good to have it, because a lot of players feel like it is just confusing new players and that the whole thing is unnecessary. And so this video is basically just to kind of explain why the FGC does this. And if you personally don't like numpad notation, that's fine, that's your personal preference, whatever. But I'm just here to explain why we do it. So yeah. So why do we use numpad notation? Well, the main reason is just because it is easier and faster to type and to say. Down is going to be 4 characters long, but 2 is only going to be 1 character long, and this gets even more exaggerated when we throw diagonals into the mix. So you get things like down forward, which is just going to be 3 in numpad, which is a lot easier to type and to say. And this matters a lot when you have these like really long combos where you don't want to be typing out all of these different directions. It is just a lot easier to just write 1 character for each direction. And if you have 2 like relatively experienced FGC people who know numpad notation, I say relatively experienced because it is not actually that difficult to learn. In practice, it is actually a lot more intuitive than it looks at first. Then these players will have no reason not to use numpad notation because they both know what they're talking about, and it is just easier and faster than to say all the directions like all the time. However, it is important to note that not all games will actually use this formatting. Tekken is a big example, right? They have a completely different system, and even for something like Street Fighter, you'll hear Street Fighter players, they'll just say like down back a lot, or they will just say back or whatever, right? It's actually relatively rare to actually hear them use the like actual numbers. I actually don't know why this is for Street Fighter specifically, but I don't know if other games similar to it do that, but whatever. Well, why don't we just say like quest forward or QCF for special moves, right? Like using QCF instead of 2-3-6, right? To describe the core circle forward motion, right? And for some special move inputs, this does make sense, right? Done the example. Right, there we go. I'm gonna go to where was it? Special moves. So Zangief's SPD, right? In order to do Zangief's SPD, you have to do a full circle with your stick, right? Which is really, if you were to write that out into numpad notation, would be very long, and it would be kind of hard to read, right? So that's why on Super Combo Tree they just put 360, which is 360 degrees, right? And this just it is a lot easier in this case, right, than to do the numpad notation. And Zangief even has, I had it up earlier, he even has a 720, which is 2 circles, and this would be even more difficult to write out in numpad notation, right? So in certain cases it does make sense, and I'll even say stuff like DP instead of 623 sometimes, right, because it's just kind of easier sometimes. However, the reason why we do not always do this is because we would have to individually decide what every single special move input is gonna be on what our on the combo recipes, right? And there are some obvious ones like quest forward to be QCF, right? And for a lot of games there only are like a few different special move inputs. However, there are also like a lot of really random weird inputs, right? You have stuff like pretzel motion. I think there's like some games where like you have like a star motion or whatever. You have like Batista who has like up and then down, like up charge, up down, stuff like that. There are a lot of like really random edge chases and a lot of random special moves. But the thing about numpad was that we can apply numpad notation to pretty much every single special move input that can exist, right? Because we have all the directions represented and we have terminology for like charge and stuff like that. So most special move inputs, or like most moves, can be represented in numpad notation. And the reason why I say almost every move is because there are a couple of edge cases that kind of break this. The biggest one that comes to mind for me is Batista's gem detonation, right? you don't actually need to know like what this is really. Just know that it cannot really be represented by the like traditional numpad notation. Because of that, for vertical combos that use this, which is actually like most of them, it'll just be abbreviated to DET for detonate, right? To show this. It's kind of a special case that just kind of has to be implemented. Another reason that we use numpad notation instead of QCF or something like that is because it kind of transcends language. Here I am watching a Japanese Uni guide. I'll just show the channel that if you're wondering. And see here, I can read this just fine because it is in numpad notation, which is the same in Japanese as it is in English, because it is just using numbers. Now you may be wondering, what about the buttons though? The buttons like has L, M, and H, right? And those like are abbreviations of English words, light, medium, heavy, right? So what doesn't this like break the whole like language boundary thing that we've been like going for? Well, the thing is that the L, M, and H for 2HKO, that isn't the community like deciding what those should be called. That is like officially what like Riot is referring to them here. As you can see, in game it is referred to as L, M, and H, right? And also what you may notice is that I have the setting set to Japanese, right? Right now, I have set to Japanese, and it is still L, M, and H. So a Japanese player playing 2SKO is gonna still know these buttons as L, M, and H, maintaining like the whole language barrier that I was talking about before. So you can still have like 2SKO combos that use numpad notation with L, M, and H, and people will be able to understand them regardless of like what language they are playing the game in. Another alternative that I see is using arrows instead of the like numbers for directions. And particularly the case of using like the arrow emojis in order to do it. And the thing about this is that it is kind of hard to type it. Like this is Discord, for example, which is a pretty common place where you would do combo recipes, right? If you want to show other people, like I would have to like go into here, and then I have to like search up arrow, and then let's do chorus. Let's do like a chorus roll forward, right? 2, 3 sets. So like we have to do down, and then we have that, and then like this. Like that took so long, as opposed to just 2, 3 sets. Oh fuck, sets there. I hope that didn't diminish my point. But yeah, it's a lot easier just to type out the numpad notation than to have to use these emojis, right? Another example, like let's say we're doing a Google Doc, right? Just we're making a Google Doc guide of some kind, right? And I want to do 2, 3 sets onto here, right? So I have to go to symbols, emoji, and then there, and then where is down? There, down, and then insert symbols, emoji, there. And then there we go. There, I just did it. Even though I could have just done this. Oh, but I don't have this selected. I could have just done. Wait, what? Hello? There we go. 2, 3, 6. Boom, easy. And to be fair, you could like copy paste this, I guess. But like, still, it is still just easier to have the 2, 3 sets, right? Well, why don't we just use the names of the special moves themselves, right? Instead of having to type out 2, 3 sets A or whatever, right? Well, when you are casually talking, it made sense to do this. I'll do this a lot. I'll just say like fireball or DP or whatever, right? Instead of saying like 2, 3 sets, whatever, right? However, when it comes to like writing up combos and stuff like that, it's still faster just to write 2, 3 sets than to write Hadouken, right? And this also breaks apart with certain special moves, particularly really weird ones, like fucking these Bedmans. What is this? Is this fucking assembly or something like that? What the fuck is this? You really expect me to first of all remember what these moves even are, and also like to like these. This is so weird. Like obviously it's just better to write 2, 3 sets or whatever, right? For these, because it's just so much. Imagine having to write all of these out in like a combo trail, right? And you also have special moves that are just like entire sentences. I use this to catch fish. That is the name of her spike move. Yeah, the spike move. That's what this one is. Like that's like this would just be a mouthful. And you also have someone like Gold Lewis, where all of these moves, these are different moves, by the way, with different properties. All of these moves are called Behemoth Typhoon, and they all have different inputs. Why would you do this when you can just write these 3 funny numbers and you instantly tell what it is instead of having to you would have to, if you wanted to specify, you would have to say Behemoth Typhoon and then you would have to specify the input anyways. So yeah, it doesn't work for something like this. One quick thing that I forgot to mention was that any alternative proposed that only replaces how we would do special moves, it doesn't consider the fact that it would still be more practical to still have the number notation for non-special move inputs. All right, so if you're doing a crouching attack, right, you would still just say 2A or 2L or whatever, right? So if we already have that notation for the normal moves, we might as well also just use it for the special moves anyways. Now, why don't we just write the actual buttons on the controllers, like A or B or whatever, right? Or X, Y, all of that stuff, right? And this makes sense if you're coming from a game like League, for example, right? Where the abilities in that game are named, people refer to them by the button, by the key used to press them, right? But this makes sense in a game like League, where most of the player base is going to be playing on keyboard, and most of the player base is also going to be using some approximation of the default layout. But for fighting games, you have people using all different kinds of controllers. You have sticks, you have pads, you have leverless, right? You have keyboard. But even if we just limit it to pads, right? Even the different pads have different buttons. Xbox will be A, B, X, Y. PlayStation will be triangle, X, circle, and square. But even something like Switch controller, right, which also has A, B, X, Y the Xbox, but they're in different places, right? So it just doesn't work because there's so many different controllers, right? And there's not even including the fact that a lot of people have different controller mappings than other people. And that is pretty much it. That is why we use numpad notation, and why a lot of the suggestions that people have been giving aren't actually that good. And if this video seemed rushed, that's because it kind of was. I just really wanted to get my thoughts out, because I've been just hearing all this discourse, and I felt the need to just say my piece. So this is my piece. Yeah.